What's up, my guys? Welcome to episode 22 of the My Guys Magic podcast. I'm here with my brother Pete. Say what's up.
What's up, my guys? Pete here.
So this week,
What's up, Joe?
what's up, Pete? How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How was Teresa doing? She feeling better?
She's healing. Yeah.
Healing. Good. Good. Glad that she's on the mend, man. Um, so this week, we're talking about a little bit of standard and modern updates. We're just going to briefly touch on modern as we, are almost into the modern RCQ season. But the crux of what we're going to talk about is sequencing. There's a lot to talk about. Honestly, the best way to get better at sequencing, in my opinion, is just through reps and practice. But we're going to try to give some highlights for that, and hopefully help you walk away from this episode feeling a little bit better about sequencing. Before we get started, we wanted to shout out our boy Matt Anciaux, who uh, made it to the semifinals of the Hunter Burton Memorial.
Main event. Congrats, brother.
Yeah, congrats. So, just under 400 people in that modern tournament. Matt was playing blue white control. People in the chat were rooting for him as the kind of what it felt like the underdog in a lot of matchups. And yeah, so that was cool to see, to see him do well. Um,
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was on my lunch break and I just happened to turn on Twitch and saw Matt on camera. I was like, let's go.
yeah, yeah. So that was pretty cool. So we wanted to have Matt on here this week, but for some reason he doesn't feel like our listeners would be interested in having him interviewed. And I'm like, dude, we're about to enter modern RCQ. Just because you were playing blue white doesn't mean that people won't be interested in your tournament experience or your take on the modern format overall. So we need somebody to post a comment to one of the episodes so we can get him on here, hopefully next week, and so we can discuss his experience at the Hunter Burton Memorial and what he thinks about the modern format. So please, someone, drop us a comment and tell him that he needs to come on here.
Yeah, come on, Matt. Get in here.
Seriously, seriously. All right, so um, a little bit of standard data to look at. Um, Over the last week, there were 4 standard challenges that we looked at, and then 3 regional championships: the Southeast Asia RC, Japan, and Australia. For whatever reason, I couldn't find the Chinese RC. It just wasn't posted anywhere. So we probably could have found it through a little bit more digging on social media or something, but there's probably I imagine that data would also be relatively limited as well. So I feel like most of these big websites, these meta websites, are pretty good at compiling all that. But um, so a little over 1,000 players between those 7 events. Again, 4 standard challenges and the 3 RCs. 3 of those events were won by Is It Prowess, 2 Mono Green Landfall. Southeast Asia RC was taken down by 4 Color Elementals, which was made me a little happy. And then 1 was taken down by Bant Rhythm. So Japan was actually taken down by Bant Rhythm, which was the largest of these events with 384 players. I didn't see really anything spicy in that list. It was basically just a standard Bant Rhythm deck. It did have 3 Sage of the Skies in the sideboard, I guess to prepare for a Is It Prowess meta, which was probably a pretty good idea. But yeah, I mean, anything kind of jump out at this meta breakdown for you, Pete?
No, I mean, it's pretty much what we've expected, right? It's a lot of
Yeah,
mono green, a lot of prowess, uh, band rhythm. It's pretty good into mono green. Um, Excruciator's still a great deck.
Yeah, a little bit of a. So I guess.
Lessons. Let's see. It's all the Is It Prowess players playing the crab, right?
Hmm. Yeah, we talked about that. I want to say last week.
Yeah.
Um, I think
Saw
Demir
Tyree
Excruciator.
Animator coming back.
I don't know if I mean it's just like a couple of here. Um, I'm not sure, but yeah, I guess you know, Mono White Shepherd was this breakout deck from last week, and it's actually kind of like fractured into like a Boros version, which is playing Lightning Helix, and um, what other what other red cards was it playing? Um,
Were they playing Hellkite?
I think so. I think so. Um, so that was in the Bangkok event.
Right, because a 2 mana Nova Hellkite is pretty good.
Oh yeah, with Momo. So let's see
Yeah.
here. So Boros Blink. Yeah, just Nova Hellkites. Oh, and Burst Lightning. They weren't even playing Lightning Helix. So okay. So it's basically Mono White Shepherd with Nova Hellkite and Burst Lightning.
Yeah.
So
And then I saw some versions. I don't know. I don't see any here, right? Oh yeah, there it is. Blue white for
yeah,
for the Rizzler,
for the Riz. For the Riz, yeah. So let's see if we can pull that up real quick.
which is funny because that's what uh, Scott was playing right when Avatar released.
Oh yeah.
Remember he came
But
out
he
with
was
that
but he was
Momo and Riddler.
Oh, right, right. But it was kind of, but people were kind of playing like the splash portal thing too, and he was doing that,
Right.
right?
He was playing Splash Portal in there also. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it is right here, Azorius Blink. And this is not playing Splash Portal. It is playing a couple Detect Intrusion main, but it's also playing Mockingbird, which I want to say Scott was playing Mockingbird too. So,
Detect Intrusion.
which is Spider
Spider
Sense.
Sense.
Spider Sense, yeah. So, yeah, so a
We
little bit of
need
spice with Shepherd,
we
but
need them to print the Omen Path cards in paper.
right. Uh, one mono red deck in these top performing decks, and then one Golgari Kona, which I think came out of the also from the Southeast Asia RC. It was basically playing like a green black mid range build with some Konas to sneak in some of the larger um, what were the saga creatures called from Final Fantasy? Like the incarnations? No, that's not it. But
Oh
yeah,
man,
like
I, I, I
Bahamut
s-
and
I- I see them every day.
I know you just look at them in the
Summon.
case all day. Summons, yeah,
Yeah.
right. So playing some of those. Um, but yeah, I think
Anything stand out to you?
no, not really. I just think seeing some of this change up, but everything else looks pretty much the same. Um, I think people have adjusted a little bit to Mono White Shepherd, so it's and people are iterating on it. So I think it's here to stay. I mean, it looks like it's fallen off in its meta share, but if you add up the three different versions, it's still the fifth most represented deck in the top eight across these events. So still something
Yeah,
to think about.
where's Dem- where's Demir Mid in all this after last weekend?
Yeah. So what did happen last weekend? So I mean, Demir Mid was still only, it was, two, 4% of the top eight percentage in last week's event. So just bad week. I don't know. People, I think Demir Mid is particularly bad against mono white shepherd. So maybe an increase in mono white shepherd has made Demir Mid untenable because they're just putting a bunch of creatures on the battlefield, um, and they're getting so much value from their creatures and kind of going wide. And I just don't think that it it has it. You know, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just love Demir Mid, but
I
it's
know.
not. It's just never it. you know.
Yeah. So I was going to compile modern results as well for today, but the Hunterburt Memorial, I couldn't find the data for that on mtgdex.net or MTG Top 8. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but it hasn't trickled its way into one of those platforms yet. So maybe it was a good thing that we didn't have Matt on today to discuss that in greater detail, and probably be able to find that for next week.
Right.
But
So we have
just,
more info.
yeah, to talk about that tournament in a little bit greater detail. But until then, I think I just wanted to quickly show what the meta is looking like and kind of what some of the win rates look like. So, does any of this, these top performing percentages, or this tier list from mtgdex.net make sense to you, Pete?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I've been seeing with challenge results. Right. There's
Yeah.
a lot of energy, a lot of affinity at the top. Uh, People are just still trying to figure out this sewer cam combo. Deck looks
Mm-hmm.
sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, where's Hollow One though?
No, it's not on here. um, I think it's kind of Titan has dropped down since the last time I was really paying attention to Modern, because the last time I was really paying attention to Modern was for RC Vegas in November,
Yep.
and Amulet Titan was like a top three deck then, right?
Yeah.
So to see it all the way down here at 3%, I'm just curious why we think that has happened.
I don't know. Maybe it's a psyop to get people off it. Not prepared for it, right?
Could be, could be.
Not as many people playing it online as they would be in paper. And there hasn't been a lot of paper modern, right?
Yeah,
So most of
yeah,
this
maybe
is
that's part of it. It
most of
is hard
this
to
is
play online.
just you know challenge results really. Besides the Hunter Burton Memorial, has there been modern
No, not
O-
really.
other than like Reese Qs and stuff? I'm not sure. I don't think so. So
Yeah. Um, like Boros Energy is still just like a completely disgusting deck. It's what won the Hunter Board Memorial. It's
yeah,
the most represented deck in the meta by a factor of two, and it still has a 55% win rate. Um, Affinity, if looking at the win matrix, looks like it has a higher uh, win rate at 57%. But um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that is. Why it's so lopsided. But
a lot of energy enjoyers.
yeah, maybe it's just like Affinity. It is so polarizing, and maybe that's part of the issue with Titan too. Is that the hands and like your draw sequences can be very polarizing. Whereas like you have to keep very specific hands to be able to win, and so you have to mulligan very carefully. And I don't. I think people always feel like garbage when they mulligan. because
Yep.
with most of the decks that we're used to playing with and like our exposure and limited, when we become resource constricted in most of our matchups, it's just like a very bad thing. But with decks like Titan and Affinity, I think that you have to have a very specific hand in order to do what you need to do. But when you do that thing, you just are winning so much. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
No, that sounds about right. Like you played
Yeah.
Affinity. You
Yeah.
did
Got him
you
owned in a
enjoy
lot.
it?
I mean, I did. I did fine with it, right, in Vegas. And I honestly think that I would have had a much better performance if I would have just slowed down, which I think is a perfect segue to talk about what we want to talk about today with sequencing.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I think a lot of sequencing that we're going to talk about is really just how to play out your cards. Um, Specifically with combat, I think we want to leave that to a separate episode. Is that fair to say?
That yeah, combat
I
can,
I
that
don't.
can be a lengthy discussion. So
Yeah,
that could be a whole episode on its own.
yeah, and I think that yeah, combat really is just best. You get better at combat by playing a lot of limited. Like so we won't really touch on combat, and then the only other thing that I want to talk about before we really get started with our conversation is understanding the meta is key to informing optimal sequencing in a given matchup. So, knowing in a general sense what the composition of your opponent's deck looks like, even if you don't have an open deck list, and having reps to help you inform what ideal sequencing looks like. So,
Right.
Pete,
You should definitely know the expected meta, right?
yeah,
So I know what threats to kill, what cards to counter.
yeah,
So I'm not just willy nilly firing off my counter spells just because I have it. Stuff like that.
right, yeah. What is the line and sequence of plays that my opponent takes that lose the game for me, or that like how do I avoid that, or what are the sequence of plays that I need to take into my opponent's game plan to win the game? Um, that's another like underlying thing that we didn't really talk about in our prep, Pete. Was there's kind of like two schools of thought: playing to win versus playing to not lose.
Right.
Um, and sometimes playing to not lose is going to get you closer to an inevitability with your list, and a lot of that decision space depends on what you're playing. But I think the general rule of thumb is to play to win, to
Right.
rather
But you
than
do,
playing not to lose.
but sometimes you do find yourself in a position where you have to play not to lose to buy some time
Yeah,
to where you can switch back to play to win, right?
yeah, I think that is a good way to put it. Yeah, but and we'll kind of talk about that as we go through here. So Pete, you did some prep for this. Do you want to share this golden nugget?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, am I doing it?
Yeah, man, just fire it off.
All right. So, did some digging, found some old articles, and there was what we found the golden rule, right? As somebody said.
You can name drop it, dude. It's all good.
All right. It, Reed Duke wrote an article 10 years ago, right? And he said, think through your entire turn before you take an action. Untap, upkeep, draw your card, pause. And I think that's very valuable advice. And uh, thinking, knowing what you're going to do before you take your whole turn has benefits, right? So I'm not just jumping into an attack and then pausing. Like I already know the plan. I already know what I'm gonna do if you do this and all that. It's just it's just the golden rule, right? It leads to proper sequencing, leads to more
Yes.
victories. What do you think about that rule?
Yeah, I love it. I think just the idea to try to think through it as much as you can, to try to pause. I kind of liken it to like chess for people who play chess regularly or who have played chess. You're trying to you're trying to let your mind sequence through a number of turns and counter actions that your opponent can take, and then kind of taking actions with those thoughts in mind to best protect your game plan.
Yeah. So
Um,
along these lines, right? I did I cut you off? Sorry.
no, go ahead.
All right, good. My turn. Joe, Joe, be quiet. So, so just kidding. Um,
No, I know.
so we all know Corey Burkhart, right? So I played against him a couple times, and I love watching him play. He's a great guy, but anytime I watch him play, he'll sit there at the start of his turn, right, and he not just think through it, but he'll talk through it. And he's like, "All right, so if I do this, you're gonna do this," and he's saying all this out loud, right? He's like, "All right, but if I do this, you do that," and he's like pointing at cards, and he like figures out every possible scenario in like 10, 15 seconds. And then takes his
Yeah,
turn. And I'm like, this dude's genius.
yeah, or even if it takes 30 seconds. And so you saying that was actually a thought that I was going to share because I think for some people it's hard for them to think through everything in their mind. Like some people's thoughts can be very noisy and it
Right.
can be hard to like get it all out. And so if for Corey Burkhart, him talking through it and hearing it and speaking it out loud, even if he's giving away a little bit of information to his opponent, he's never saying specific cards, but he's like, all right, if I do this, he's just literally saying those words. Like, if I do this, you might have
Right.
that. He's not saying, like, if I play this creature, you'll cast counterspell or, you'll have
Right.
subtlety or, you know what I mean? But he's just like saying it out loud. And I think that's helping him get his thoughts out. And there have been times where I've had to do some math on paper. So as a player, like if you want to write it down, like if that's going to help you figure it out, just know that your opponent can see your notepad. So if you need to have some shorthand or something like that. And I've actually done that in a game where I've like abbreviated a card that I thought my opponent had or something like that. And he actually knew what the abbreviation was and uh I can't remember exactly what that was, but so yeah, however you want to help yourself get through that thought process, right? I think that's a
Yeah.
great example.
Yeah. Yeah. Taking notes. That's why I always have a pen and paper with me. Not only keep score, but you know.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this most likely course of action, most deadly course of action real quick because I think it ties together everything that we were just talking about with respect to knowing whether you need to be taking action to try to win or to not lose. Um, and it also ties into thinking through your turn and what you need to consider. And it's mindful of the meta and knowing the meta game. So I'm sure if you've been listening long enough, you know that I'm prior military. And so there's this concept that we discuss in mission analysis and intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And it's called two concepts: most likely course of action and most deadly course of action. And it relates to what your opponent or the enemy um, can or will do, and how you're going to best prepare your response to that course of action that your opponent is going to take. So, most likely course of action is what they most probably have based on how they played over the previous turns. Um, Maybe it's based on the number of cards that you've already seen. If you've already seen two fatal pushes, the chance that they have a third is pretty small. Um, but the most deadly course of action is if they have that third fatal push, it could be completely backbreaking to what your game plan is. So trying to understand, think about those two concepts as you're thinking through the turn. Like, okay, most likely they're going to have, this sequence of play. Maybe they play another creature. Maybe they have a piece of interaction. Most deadly thing is they have a fatal push into, you know, uh, Murktide region or whatever. Whatever it is that is like the most backbreaking to whatever it is you're trying to do. And then you have to consider how you counteract that. Um, can you even beat their most deadly course of action, and can you take any steps to beat that? Or do you just have to play to the most likely course of action because you don't have the resources available to beat their most deadly one? And just kind of maybe framing it in that way will help you think about it a little bit better, but maybe not. So I think it's just a good thought exercise that can maybe help you through this all. So what do you think, Pete?
Yeah,
Is that all?
no, that's perfect. I like the way you explained that because I was going to ask you what you're talking about. So now I don't have to because you just told me. You just told all of us. Um, but yeah, no, that's a really good thought exercise, right? What could they have? Do they most likely have? How do I play around it? These are all like 10, 20 seconds. Think that through before you make a move, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, seeing how they've played can inform you of what they may have. And obviously, we've all tilted off when it's like, sweet, you've cast your fourth lightning bolt, or you've cast your third solitude, or you name the card, right? Like
Right, right. Well, it's like
you're like,
yesterday, right? I was playing against Living End, and I'm like, all right, they already cast a force. What are the odds they have another one? Oh, cool, they had another one.
yeah, yeah. So sometimes that's gonna happen, right? And it's part of the game. But you made an informed decision based on cards you'd already seen, and
Yeah,
unfortunately they had it. So
yeah, and I was dead if I didn't go for it. And you find yourselves
there-
in those situations also, right, where you have
yeah,
to just try and go for it.
yeah. And I think we talked about it before, where sometimes you go through this thought process, right? And based on what you've already seen played out in the game, based on what you have, you make a decision. And sometimes it's the only decision. Sometimes you have another decision, but based on what it was the best decision, even though it was the wrong decision. And that doesn't necessarily make you a bad player or make it the wrong
Right.
decision. Sometimes it's just, uh, probability wasn't on your side. So, um, all right. So sequencing. Now we're going to actually talk about sequencing as best we can.
Okay. What we got first? Land sequencing.
Yes, sir. Simple, but I mean, got to have resources to play your cards first. So when you think of land sequencing, like, what are you thinking about when you're trying to sequence out your lands?
I think of proper fetching, right, to get the right colors for the cards in my hand or what I could potentially draw.
Mm.
If I'm playing tap lands, playing those out first if I can, unless it's beneficial to hold them for later. You were talking about yesterday about utility lands, right?
Hmm.
Depending on the matchup, it, it's best to hold those, like concealing information, right? You
Money,
talked
yeah,
about.
yeah,
Like on turn one, maybe I fetch a basic of an off, so to try and conceal to my opponent what I'm playing. Like if I'm playing online,
yeah,
this doesn't work in open deck list, obviously.
Right.
But like I'll fetch a mountain instead of a blood crypt, so give me a turn to see what they're on before they know what I'm on type
Yeah, if
sequencing,
it's
right?
yeah, if that's not going to hurt your mana efficiency for the future turns, that's a perfect example of like concealing information and trying to, hide what you're doing.
Right, these are all things to consider in land sequencing, right?
Yeah.
Where'd we put it? Like land sequencing. No, go ahead. What do you got on it?
Yeah, I think if you're playing like a monocolored deck, maybe you have some utility lands, like you said, you want to play those as late as possible, like Soulstone Sanctuary. You want to play it as early as necessary where you can activate it and attack with it, but I don't think you want to play it any earlier than you would want to be able to activate it and attack with it so it didn't have summoning sickness. Because it's just one more piece of information that you can hide from your opponent. Same thing with like a Field of Ruin or any other kind of like land like that. You don't want to play it until you're going to have the strongest effect from that card because it can force your opponent into um, playing differently in lieu of that information, right? Like if you play a Field of Ruin on turn 3, but you need it until turn 5, maybe your opponent sequences differently uh, their mana base or their whatever it might be. I don't have a perfect example of that, but
Right, where they may mainly fetch some basics to
yeah,
limit your targets or make sure they leave basics in their deck for when you do field
yeah,
stuff like that, right?
perfect, yeah, perfect example. And then yeah, I think in general you want tap lands to come in first, and so you can have access to mana later in the game. Um, Unless you need to cast a spell earlier and you need to play an untapped source first. That's kind of like a basic rule of thumb. Um, I think that when you're playing multicolor decks that have 3+ colors, um, that are really constricted on mana, it can be a challenge. And then we saw it in the Hunter Broughton Memorial coverage with Domain. You're playing a deck that has uh, the ley line in it that makes your lands produce all 5 colors. But if you don't have that ley line, sometimes you need to have like flage mana, but you also want to have a little bit of green for some of your creatures and white for ley line binding, and then you need
Well,
blue for interaction, and um, it can be hard to fetch your lands to ensure you have the right mana and that you tap the mana appropriately to be able to cast the interaction that you have on their turn or whatever it might be.
yeah, I don't mind facing that deck when they don't have leyline in play.
Oh, really? Because you just feel like they can't get their mana together.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, even with leyline in play, as long as they don't get a Draco, everything's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So just some things to think about with land sequencing. And then we're going to talk about threat and interaction sequencing. So, Pete, threat sequencing, like what does that
What do we
mean?
got? Considering opposing interaction and the battlefield, right? So threat sequencing. What we got? Baiting removal.
Yeah.
Don't overcommit in the sweepers. Um, it's like, do I play? Say I have a creature and I'm going to combat, but I have a creature in hand. Which one do I want to live most, right? So
Yeah.
if I want if I want the one that I'm gonna attack with to live, I'll try and bait out removal by playing my creature pre-combat or playing it post-combat if I want that one to live, right?
Yeah. Which which brings up
Go
another
ahead.
good rule of thumb, right, with respect to playing spells pre or post combat. I think in general, it's best to play spells and lands post combat because if
Correct.
right, you're concealing that information about what you're gonna do. But I think to your point, like, what are some good examples of when you do want to play spells pre-combat?
Uh,
You had
when I Oh yeah, I had an example, right?
yeah.
So say I play Rakdos Monument.
Hmm.
And I have a Moon Shadow in play. I want to play my creatures pre-combat to give you a chance to counter them or kill them to grow my Moon Shadow, right?
Yeah. And keeping in mind that if it's a counter spell, you're playing around, that is the play you would want to take. Whereas if it's removal, chances are they could just kill your
The
Moon Shadow anyway.
correct,
So in that case, you would probably just want to attack first. Um,
correct.
yeah. So s- s- some things to consider there.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you say you're playing against a blue deck, you'll cast it first.
yeah.
Oh, I was thinking something else too, but I lost it. There we go. Cool.
That there's that early onset again, dude.
Yeah. Oh man.
Do you drink coffee? Did we talk about this already?
Oh yeah, I drink coffee.
Yeah.
Only
Did you have some this morning, or do you feel that like helps you?
I don't even know. It's just habit now. I don't know if it helps me.
Yeah. 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 Some people are like caffeine is like what I need to function. You know what I mean? It's like how it gets them going. I feel like
Yeah, no,
caffeine makes me nervous.
no, I don't think it has any effect on me. I just like it.
Yeah.
So, but
Love the smell of coffee, but it makes me anxious.
but yeah, that's what I was thinking about. You say like the general consensus is play your lands and spells after combat, right?
Right.
Except under certain circumstances where it's beneficial to play them pre-combat. Um,
Yeah.
like a lot of times you want to play your lands first, right? If you're holding up interaction, you want to make sure you have the
Maximum
mana
mana. Yeah.
to counterplay their interaction during combat, right?
Right. And I have actually found myself more and more just playing my land before combat. Um, so yeah, there is that. If you're playing a deck that is more instant speed based, um, more often than not, it's probably correct to at least play your land before combat. Um, but I think more often than not, it's correct to play your spells in the second main phase.
Yes. Yeah,
So
only certain circumstances where you want to play it pre, right?
yeah.
Do you
So
have any
that
examples?
yeah. So like I think a perfect example is like I'm playing blue black mid, and I have a couple creatures on the battlefield, and let's say I'm playing, uh, you know, it could be mono red, it could be any deck that has some creatures and some amount of instant speed interaction, and my opponent is representing some type of instant speed interaction. Um, I go to combat, and let's say my hand I have like a bitter triumph and a flood pitch drowner. So if I have only 3 mana in play and I want to be able to cast bitter triumph and flood pitch drowner, I need to play that fourth land before I go to combat because maybe they flash in an instant speed threat and I don't want my creatures to die, so I flood
Right.
pitch drowner their creature, or and because maybe I want to save bitter triumph for a scarier threat, like a Nova Hellkite or something like that, or whatever it might be that they have. Um, or maybe they have a pump spell. So they go to block, and I'm happy to make a trade, or um, or something like that. Like I'm happy to trade creatures, but if they have the pump spell, I have the Bitter Triumph as well to interact. So it just really it depends on how much mana you have available, what cards you have at your disposal, and how much information you're willing to give to your opponent. So again, we go back to understanding the meta and having prepared in those matchups to act accordingly. So
Yeah, that's what I love open deck lists, right? I can just pick up your graveyard and see what you've already cast and know
you've got left.
how many you got left, right?
Yeah.
And what do you got on don't overcommit into sweepers if possible.
Yeah,
Just a general rule, right?
for sure. Yeah, and it's funny we talk about that, right? I remember one of the most tilting games in my life. I mean, I wasn't that angry, but it was just like, go figure. I was playing against, is it Phoenix? And I was on blue white control, and it was at Chicago. And game one, my opponent had 3 counter spells in their main deck. They had a Spell Pierce, a Jawari Disruption, and a Negate main deck. Granted, they're playing a lot of cantrips, and I'm not sure that they had cast a Treasure Cruise yet. But basically, turn 4, I went. It was like Wandering Emperor and then Teferi the next turn, and then maybe another Teferi or another Wandering Emperor the turn after that, and they had a counter spell for each. They had all 3 counter spells on those turns back to back to back, and I was like, "Cool, bro. You drew all 3 of your counter spells in the top 20 cards of your deck or whatever," and yeah, it sucked. It
Yeah,
sucked.
that's brutal. That's
Yeah,
brutal.
but it's gonna happen sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yep. Variance comes for us all.
right. So
So we move
interaction
into
sequencing.
yes.
It's kind of like sometimes they're gonna have all 3 of their one-off pieces of interaction, and you're gonna get owned by it. Like
Yep. And then Joe flipped the table.
flip it. This deck is getting banned.
Yeah, there was no possible interaction sequencing that could have saved you from that.
Yeah, I mean, because I think the turn it was like end of turn cast Wandering Emperor. He had the Jawari Disruption, and then I untap play Teferi, and he had the Spell Pierce, and it's like that right there. It was like probably the game ended, and then I think I can't remember. I think I was gonna cast a Sunfall, like the next turn cycle, and he had the negate, and the game was over. Um, so
All right, so interaction sequencing, right? We got consider opposing threats and the battlefield. Um, Save interaction for key turns and key threats, right? So
yeah,
for interaction sequencing, go back to that combat scenario where you had the bitter triumph in hand. Say I want to attack. Maybe I try and force a double block, kill one of
hmm
the blockers to save my threat, right?
perfect, perfect. Yeah, you kill their more
Like
their better static creature.
don't kill it pre-combat, kill it in combat, right? Like
Right. when
use
they make the double
use
block.
use your instant spells appropriately,
Yeah.
right? Like, don't cast my instants on my turn if I don't have to.
Yeah.
It's, I've
You're
I've done that too many times. I'll cast this instant when I could have just done it on your turn to force you to either deal with what I'm casting, and then that leaves you with less mana on my next turn.
Yeah, and I think it's like this made me think of something else. Like one of the other rules of thumb is maximizing the value of every card in your hand, right? Like doesn't matter if you're playing blue white control or mono red aggro. So in the view of mono red aggro, you're trying to sequence your cards so that your hired claw can do the most amount of damage possible to your opponent, right?
Yep.
Whereas if you're playing like blue white control, you want your wrath to kill as many creatures as possible. So you're trying to like use your in the case of maximizing the value of your wrath, take some damage. Use your life source as a retotal so you can make this one card in your hand worth more by clearing more creatures. Um, like and you know, a smart player will punish you by seeing that you have the you know, they're like, yeah, this dude probably has a wrath. I'm not going to commit anything else to the battlefield. I'm going to just pressure his life total with what I have. Um,
Right, and that's the dance, right?
that's the dance. The dance, dance, dance. So, yeah, there's so many examples that we could give. But, you know, like Bolt the Bird, right? Like, is it ever correct to save your one piece of removal for a Badgermole Cub over a Llanowar Elf? I don't think so.
I don't think I have.
Yeah, I think that because if they go elf and then badger mole cub, like you kill
Then
the
they
cub, but
cast.
then they're still gonna get two more mana out of their elf, right? So I like
Yes, so I always kill the elf because what happens is they go turn one elf, turn two badger mole, second badger mole, and I accomplish nothing.
right, yeah, he did the opposite. Like yeah, like gene pollinator. I don't even know if you'd want to save, you know, badger mole cub over gene pollinator because it's the same thing, right? They go gene pollinator, turn to badger mole cub, and then if you're
Second
like
badger mole
even,
cup.
you know, yes, they can still tap and make two more mana. So that's kind of like the bolt of bird scenario we're talking about. Um, yeah, I don't know. Another, and I don't know. Rule of thumb, right? To kind of wrap it all up is if when in doubt, be mana efficient. I think that if you're not sure what line to take, if you're lost in your thoughts about how the turn might play out, if you haven't been able to properly analyze what the most likely versus most deadly course of action is and how you can respond to that, if you've tried to even talk through it or write it down and it still hasn't helped, you know, just try to be as man efficient as you can because you know most games only last 5, 6, 7 turns, or at least they're irrelevant after that. Maybe they don't end at turn 5 or 6, but they're essentially over by those turns.
Yeah, like
So
turn 6 or 7.
yeah, yeah, you only have a certain amount of mana through each of those turn sequences, and so being mana efficient is a good rule of thumb when you're not sure what to do. Um,
Yeah, and there's certain scenarios when it's appropriate not to be mana efficient, right?
yeah.
When I'm holding interaction or when I want to bluff interaction. We didn't talk about bluffing yet, right?
No, we haven't talked about bluffing. I'm glad you
Yeah.
remembered that.
Yeah, so that's an important part of sequencing also, right? Like I want to try and influence my opponent to make the least effective plays, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm playing blue, bluff a counter. There, there's things you can do to help influence those decisions, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen people do it even with like like bluffing a removal spell, but most often it's with like blue cards or a deck where you're playing at instant speed that you can represent
Yeah,
some kind of
I saw
interaction.
somebody do this, right? It's like their second main phase, they tap their mana, they think for a minute, untap, and then pass. And then they have nothing in hand. I mean, they have cards in hand, but
Yeah,
I just made my opponent think that I have removal or a counter, right?
right. Yeah, and sometimes it works, and they're like, and you can even people doing their Corey Burkhart impression, they're talking through their turn, and they'll be like, "Oh, I think you have that," and you don't, and you're just like, bluff accomplished, right?
Right.
I, like the best bluff I had, it was actually against Lee Stett in the semifinals of Reese Q at SEG Con Orlando. It was Edge of Eternity's limited, and it was game three. He had gone off and had like accrued a bunch of value and put a bunch of creatures onto the battlefield and like returned a creature to my hand. And so my hand was creature land. And I knew that if I just played the creature, I was dead based on what he had on the battlefield. So I just uh, played a land and passed and represented that I had removal and I didn't. And he bought the bluff, and then and he ended up top decking a bunch of lands, and I top decked a bunch of threats and got back in the game and won. So that's like the best bluff that I can remember. And he was like, dude, do you? He was like, you have it, don't you? And you could see him going back and forth, like, do I make him have it? Do I not? Like, and he had a bunch of resources still in his hand, but I don't think that they were very good. And then he drew a bunch more land, and yeah, so stuff like that happens.
Yeah. Sometimes it works.
So I think to kind of summarize things, just some rules of thumb from what we talked about today with sequencing. Think through your turn. However you want to do that, write it down, talk it out. Uh, if you can capture it in your mind, whatever you want to do. You want to use the most likely, most deadly course of action to talk. If that works for you, great. But think through your turn. Number two, maximize value from your cards. However you want to sequence that. And number three, when you're in doubt of what to do, just try to be mana efficient. And
And then number four, you forgot number four,
which is
understanding the meta, right?
understanding the meta.
I
Yeah, it
like
ties it all
I
together.
I need to know when to save interaction, what threats that I actually care about in your deck, right? And yeah, a good understanding of the meta is important
Yeah,
for sequencing and success in Magic.
yeah, I agree. So maybe we'll talk about or we'll talk about meta considerations next week.
Yeah, that's a good
How that
topic.
all how that all
All right.
ties together, and then we'll finish with mulligans.
Yeah. Yep. Finish with mulligans.
Okay. All right. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Please give us a follow on Spotify, Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube,
YouTube,
whatever it is,
YouTube's
the
find
tubes.
us.
Yeah, and
And
then
congrats again to Matt. Get in
yeah,
here.
get in here, dude. All right, my guys. See you next week.
All right, my guys. See y'all next week.